You're listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show, giving you weekly sports analysis, opinions, and discussion. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and J-Raff.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 152nd episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. I'm one of your hosts, Joe Mays, alongside of me, co-host J-Raff.
Yeah, it's good to be back. We're in that favorite time of the year. Get to talk a lot of different things. But football is obviously in full swing now, and we've got a lot of great games to talk about.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on all of the NFL action. I promise we'll get to them a little bit quicker than the last few weeks. We don't have a Penn State game to recap, so we won't spend much time on the Nittany Lions for now, especially with nothing happening. Not too much of a big deal. We talked at length last week, unfortunately, about some of the disappointing things that had happened in the previous two games against Northwestern and then last week in the Big House at Michigan. But we will talk a little bit about Wilson football and their run so far during the 2014 season. And like Justin said, NFL, all over the screen, ready to go. Thursday night action. Good games today, at least in terms of the game action. Maybe the opponents weren't great matchups, but the games ended up being pretty decent. A couple coming down to the last second, couple upsets. Some good games going on right now as well, including a big battle in the NFC East. And we'll get to all that stuff. But last week we didn't do this. I want to make sure we do it this week, that if there's anyone out there that wants to get their take, they can give it to us. It's an interactive show. We love to have people call us, text us, tweet us, email us, whatever. And Justin has some of that information for you.
Yeah, we'd love to have your take on any of the things we talk about during the show. So you can call the show using the Mays Sandwich Shop hotline at 530-563-6297. Again, 530-563-6297. You can also email the show using the Mays Sandwich Shop inbox at joemaysandjraff@gmail.com. Again, joemaysandjraff@gmail.com.
We also have a presence on social media. We have a Google Plus page, a Facebook fan page. You can like us on there. We have that up during the show. Ditto for Twitter, at Joe Mays and J-Raff. Again, we monitor that and Facebook during the show. So if that's more of your speed, how do you like to talk to us, ask us a question, suggest a topic, whatever, you can hit us up on a multitude of ways. Email, Facebook, Twitter, and even the phone call through the Mays Sandwich Shop hotline, 530-563-6297. Can't promise we'll get to everything or even take a call, but we wanted to make sure you knew that was an option to interact with us this evening. All right, 152nd episode for us, Week 7 of the 2014 NFL season. That will be on deck. First up, though, I think we'll spend a few minutes here talking about the local team, the high school team, the Wilson Bulldogs here in West Lawn, Pennsylvania. They face possibly their toughest test of the season, at least in league play for sure. Now, we know the first 3 weeks of the year were against some very strong Quad A District 3 opponents in Governor Mifflin, Central Dauphin East, and then Central Dauphin. But since Week 3, Wilson hasn't faced a huge test. Now, 2 weeks ago against Hempfield on homecoming, the first half looked a little iffy, and then Wilson pulled away for the win. They crushed Conestoga Valley last week and then set up a big game with undefeated in the league, Manheim Township, who at least over the last 10-plus years has been a consistently good. They're a good team, a good squad. Right. They're not a part historically with Wilson, but I'm not sure that there are many in the LL League that can say that. Then we have a big game next week versus Penn Manor. But let's talk a little bit about what happened Friday night at Gursky with the Wilson Manheim Township game. And again, it was kind of like the last home game against Hempfield, where both teams were kind of feeling each other out, struggling on offense. There were a lot of punts at the beginning, not much ball movement.
I didn't feel like it was as sloppy in the beginning. No, I felt like it was too. I felt like it was a matchup of better teams, kind of feeling each other out a little bit at the beginning, and neither team wanted to kind of make a big mistake early on. So it did have a little different feel, but yes, again, very similar because of that just tight game and kind of back and forth with no one really doing a whole lot early on in the game.
Yeah, and Wilson was finally able to get on the board on a touchdown pass from Jake Templin to Jake Gaiman, which put Wilson up 7-0 after the extra point by Nick Hart.
Right, which was kind of set up. And we talk about how, you can't necessarily look at one play and change it and then it change it. Obviously the rest of the game would be different. But there was a major series of events that took place a couple series earlier. Manheim Township had the ball, their drive stalled, and the game had pretty much been played in Wilson's defensive end of the field the entire time up to that point. And then Manheim Township kicks a field goal. I couldn't tell if it was tipped. The way it was going through the air, it looked as though it was tipped, but I guess it wasn't. It couldn't have been tipped. But anyway, it hits the crossbar and goes through. After looking like there's no way it was actually going to make it to the goal line. I mean, he kicked it hard, apparently, because it still went a long way. Hits the crossbar and goes through. So 3-0 Manheim Township. Except there was roughing the kicker.
Right.
And so Manheim Township had to make a decision of whether or not they were going to take the points off the board and take the first, I believe it was first and goal at the 8 then, or if they were just going to keep the points and kick off. And they took the points off the board, took the ball, and then got stopped at the goal line.
Yep.
And Wilson took over. Now, Wilson didn't come down and drive and score for the touchdown there. However, they got it out to within a couple inches of a first down, around the 10-yard line. Somebody made a good point because they spotted it close to the 10, and somebody's like, well, in theory, if any part of the ball is touching the 10-yard line, it can't be a first down. Because that would have meant the ball would have had to have been touching the goal line, right, which means it would have been a touchdown. Mm-hmm. But anyway, they punt, and it gets over the returner's head, and it ends up being a 66-yard punt.
It's a boom in high school football.
And, I mean, it was a beautiful punt. It was spiral. It was just a monster punt.
Yeah, Jake Klein actually walked up to me and asked if that was some kind of Wilson record for a punt. I said, I'm sorry, Jake, I don't think we have punt records in the Tradition Club stats book, but I'd have to look it up. I didn't see anything in there.
Right. However, it completely switched field position. Then Wilson forces a 3-and-out, and the punt and the returning punt was short and went out of bounds or was fielded much shorter. And I think Wilson took over at the 46 of Manheim Township.
That's about right.
That taking the points off the board led to a goal line stand, led to a massive punt which completely flipped field position and swung momentum around. And the play they scored on, what looked like, and the way they're set up, I'm like, oh man, they're playing off the receivers. Throw the bubble screen. Well, they faked it, and the cornerbacks came up, and then it looked like Shane was going out to the side, and he was going to get, kind of like a swing pass or something. And was it Gaiman who went down?
Which touchdown?
The very first touchdown.
The first touchdown was the one that Gaiman caught. Yeah,
he was just running, and there was no one within 20, 25 yards of him. The play call was perfect, and they bit, and it was.
Yeah, they actually came back.
A lot of things came together on that one play.
A similar play happened a little bit later, and Jake Gaiman just couldn't haul it in. It would have put Wilson up 14-0 going into the half. Now, at halftime, it was 7-0 Wilson. So, again, like 2 weeks ago in Hempfield, two good teams fighting to battle each other. Who's going to make adjustments? Who's going to have a big break? Who's going to make a big play? Well, ended up being Wilson. They were able to drive down the field after Township had answered. They came out, took the ball, scored. It's 7-7, new ball game. Well, Wilson's able to answer. They drive down the field, and Jake Templin's able to hit John Fox on a beautiful slant pass over the middle of the field, and Wilson takes the lead 14-7. Then after a Manheim Township punt, Wilson gets the ball back. I believe it was after a punt. I don't think it was after a turnover.
No, it was a punt. It was an okay punt, but it wasn't anything special.
Right.
I think Wilson took over at their 41.
Yeah, I was going to say right around 35-40. A couple plays later, and the entire stadium, except for apparently you say you saw it the whole way.
I was screaming it the whole way, and everybody around me is like, what?
That everyone, including me, the camera people that were there, all the photographers, everyone in the stadium is looking that it just looks like a standard, like a handoff to Shane Dantzler, going down the left side of the field towards the Wilson sideline. And next thing you know, out of the corner of my eye, I see down the Township sideline, quarterback Jake Templin is running for his life with no one near him. There was no one close to him.
I heard from some other people on the sideline, I don't believe it was from you, that some of the line coaches had already started yelling at some of the guys who they thought that they felt missed their blocks, missed their assignment on the left side.
Getting blown up.
Right. I heard they were already yelling about that.
Didn't know Jake had pulled it.
And I understand. There, a lot of coaches are focused on their guys, their specific things, and from field level, it might have been even harder to see. But you could tell it was a great fake because as Templin was going around the right side, there are defenders running by him to the play.
Yeah.
So it worked out really well, and he was able to beat everyone to the end zone.
Yeah, he got there. No one really that close, and it was a 58-yard read option quarterback keeper. He fooled everyone.
Right.
Again, unfortunately,
another great play call and executed perfectly
to perfection.
You can call great plays, and you can execute poorly called play. When you get that combination, that's when you see great plays like we saw there.
And the great thing about it is now, for heading into the Penn Manor game specifically, but through district playoffs, now everyone understands that you can't sell out on stopping Shane.
Right.
Because Jake Templin, as he's shown in other games, now he hasn't been unleashed, like that he's just going to go out there and is this incredible, athlete on the football field like we've seen in the past. Not so much at Wilson, but a lot of the other schools have sported some pretty athletic dual-threat quarterbacks. But Jake is deceptively strong, deceptively fast, and he showed that Friday night in a great throwing and running game for the senior quarterback.
Right, and I think if you watch the games at the beginning of the year versus the games now, not just at the skill positions, or the so-called skill positions, but at the other spots too, some guys are getting used to their roles. They're kind of filling in a lot better. One thing, a lot fewer missed tackles on Friday night compared to the Hempfield game. I felt that's without the benefit of watching film and those things. But I felt, especially in that first half against Hempfield, we just missed a lot of tackles. They did a good job. Like you mentioned his name before the show. I can't remember it, but the Manheim Township quarterback,
Eric Benjamin.
I can see the man. When he can step into the throw and he can fire it pretty much anywhere on the field. I thought his they had some unfortunate bounces. Some that looked like they should have been caught, or let me rephrase it. Some that had a chance to be caught weren't, and when you're playing a game and you have a thin margin of error, sometimes those are the plays that make a difference. You need to get a big play somewhere, and they just didn't ever get that real big play other than him running for some. But again, if you were to say going into that game, and Township's big plays would be from their quarterback scrambling up the middle mostly, I think that would have foreshadowed this outcome.
Right. So Wilson's up 21-7. They drive down the field again, and on Templin's third touchdown of the year, something that they've favored a lot this year and has done really well for them is the little shovel pass. This one went to Dantzler, which didn't look like it was going anywhere. He got hit hard by two Township defenders, and as he's known to do, runs over them, shakes them off, and gets into the end zone for the touchdown. Third touchdown pass for Jake Templin, which gives him 20 for the season, which, 20 touchdown passes doesn't sound like a big deal. Through 8 games, you're getting 2 to 3 a game on average, 2.5, whatever it ends up being. But for a team like Wilson or a school like Wilson, 70th season, you would think that that's probably not close to setting a record. And 20 is not a record, but 24 would be a record. And not only does he have 2 regular season games left, you have to assume that there's going to be at least 2 district games, if not a few after that.
Right.
So he essentially has to just throw 4 touchdown passes.
With health, he's guaranteed 3 more games.
Right, exactly.
Guaranteed 3 more.
He's guaranteed 3 more, and you got to think he's going to get probably at least 1 a game, if not 2. And it looks like
he'd be sitting. Jake Templin would be the
single season touchdown pass career leader. He would supplant Chad Henne with that record. Chad threw 23 his junior year, my senior year in the fall of 2002 for Wilson. So Jake Templin's on a crusade to take over that spot. And another record breaker came Friday night. Senior defensive end Austin Rosa notched a few sacks. I don't remember how many he had coming into the game, but with the 2 or 3 that he notched against Township Friday night, he is now up to 19 in his career, and that is a new career record for a Bulldogs defender.
It's crazy. He is deceptively fast. Like he's got some real speed. I know he's on the track team, and he's a bigger kid, but he can run some guys down, and he has. There's been a number of his sacks have been from like maybe designed rollouts to the other side where he just beats the guy, beats the lineman in front of him and chases down the quarterback. So well-deserved sacks and stats kind of adding up there.
He's got a pretty good bookend too in Nolan Campbell on the opposite side.
Yeah, that helps.
And he's also chasing that record. He's climbing up as well. He's a few behind Austin, but he could actually end up breaking the record, but being behind Austin as they're both doing it at the same time. But this relentless attack of the Bulldogs D has definitely created some great defenders over the year, and Austin Rosa and Nolan Campbell are joining them in that regard as they're both now 2-year starters. And just like Jake, they have at least 3 games to go.
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see. We talked about it last week. Another huge game this week. Penn Manor has, over the last 10 years or so, maybe not quite 10, but we'll just say that for the purposes of the discussion, has really, really come on strong. And I believe it's Todd Mealy.
Yep.
Todd Mealy is the coach there. Has really built that program up into something respectable. I know we touched on it last week. Penn Manor, when we were in school, was
awful.
Was one of those games that people wouldn't drive to Millersville to watch that game.
No,
like, you're not going to drive. It wasn't worth it. That is absolutely not the case anymore. Definitely a big game, section title on the line, and so we'll have to see how that plays out.
Clinch at least a share of the title for Wilson. Right now they're sitting alone at the top with 2 to play. Should they lose to Penn Manor, then there'd be a 3-way league tie.
You could see what happened in Section 2 this week, where now it's crazy. You have a 3-way tie, and so we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But another big game in Millersville this week against Penn Manor. So,
right. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Again, Wilson beat Manheim Township Friday night, 28-14. The Streaks drove down the field, got a late touchdown. Nothing else came of it. Ended up losing 28-14. Wilson traveling to Millersville to take on Penn Manor this Friday night. So it'll be interesting to see what Wilson's able to do. But Wilson's historically been very strong against the Comets. And actually, I don't even know when the last time Wilson lost to Penn Manor. There's a chance that Wilson's never lost to Penn Manor.
I'm not sure they have ever lost to Penn Manor. I think that's part of this whole thing. The last few years, it's been the game of the LL League.
They got close in 2012.
Last year they played them twice.
Got close once in 2013.
Right.
Not the second time. The second time was a blowout in Wilson's favor. But, this is, again, Penn Manor and Manheim Township were seen as the challengers to Wilson, and through Hempfield, too, the 3 of them. Well, now, Wilson's gotten through 2 of them. They got 1 more to go. And then Warwick sitting there at the end of the year, which it shouldn't be a real challenger for Wilson as long as they don't
I think that's who Penn Manor beat this week.
Yes, it was 31-13, I believe.
Right.
But, Wilson, take care of business this week, and you're guaranteed at least a share, and you take care of business against Warwick, quite possibly the weakest team in the league, and you're guaranteed, first, a second straight undefeated regular season, which hasn't happened that often. Despite this being the 70th year and the great program that Wilson is, back-to-back undefeated seasons is rare.
It's unreal.
And this would also be the 7th straight Lancaster-Lebanon League Section 1 title, just extending the record for that, because the most that had ever been won in Section 1, I think, was 4. and they're chasing Manheim Central's overall, regardless of section, streak of. I think this would actually break it because I think Manheim Central won 6 straight. This would be Wilson's 7th. They're chasing Manheim Central's game-winning streak in the league, which is
53, 52,
in the low 50s, right. Which Wilson, if they would win out this year, would be able to tackle at the beginning of next season. So a lot of Wilson stuff happening. It's another great year for the Bulldogs, and hopefully they can keep it up. And
like we said, big game this week. Don't want to get caught looking ahead and thinking that you can coast, because that's right when things will come and get you. Yeah. So hopefully they can take care of business this week too.
Definitely. So no Penn State talk this week, so we're going to move right on to the NFL talk. We got about 20 minutes to go here. Quickly, Thursday night was an interesting game, an all-AFC East battle up in Foxborough. The Patriots, who seem to have gotten back on track, struggled a bit against the Jets, who are quite possibly terrible.
Didn't really surprise me that it was close, just because Rex Ryan's defense can, usually keep them in a game against the Patriots. It kind of came down to almost exactly what you would think in this game, that the Jets' just offense isn't good enough for them to compete. And the Patriots, though, again, it's hard to say this when they put up 27 points.
Right.
But it was rather underwhelming, like you mentioned. You see now a 1-6 Jets team. They were 1-5 coming into this game, and their one win was against the Raiders, right?
Right.
So very underwhelming. So it'll be interesting to see how those teams do moving forward. But at the same time, the Patriots are sitting at 5-2. For all this talk about how they've struggled, they're sitting at 5-2. I think they'll be okay. On the other hand, one of those things we talked about how, we talked about with some other teams, but that Bengals win, that blowout win, they kind of started this kind of free fall for the Bengals, but with every week right now, that Bengals win blowout is kind of losing a little luster for the Patriots. Now, the good news is that doesn't matter in the NFL. They beat them. They beat them soundly. Matter. That's all that matters. They won. So we'll have to kind of see how this goes. But again, Patriots win an AFC home game. Surprise.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. It happened. I don't think. When was the last time that they lost?
I think it's been 40-some games against AFC opponents. Now, that being said, in their last 7 playoff games, they're 4-3 at home. So it has...
Right, this is regular season. Yeah, right. I don't want to,
So that was in the discussion that I had heard about it. It changes when it's in the playoffs, but obviously it's going to change when you're in the playoffs because it's... you're playing better teams. So that's going to happen.
Right.
Anyway, the Patriots got a big win over a fellow AFC East opponent. Might have put the nail in the coffin for the Jets. May have put the nail in the coffin for Rex Ryan. And so we'll have to wait and see. Are the Jets going into their bye? I know they haven't had their bye yet.
That's a good question.
I doubt it, though. Coming off of a Thursday night, they probably don't have the bye this week coming up. That would seem like an unfortunate time for it.
Yeah,
so you get extra rest.
I don't know without looking up their schedule. I don't think that they do, at least at that moment. But the Patriots, they moved to 5-2. Jets dropped to 1-6. Percy Harvin trade. Really weird.
And the news coming out of this. Now, real quick, I just want to mention something about the news coming out of this. All these people are ripping NFL insiders for not having this news beforehand about
good
all these
teams
rips.
Keep this under wraps.
It's the same people who are ripping NFL insiders for not having this information who rip teams when this stuff comes out saying, you need to keep this stuff in-house.
Right.
You can't have it both ways.
No, you can't have it both ways.
I would rather keep it in-house.
I'd rather have it this way, honestly.
Heck yeah.
I don't want all the dirty laundry out there. Right. You know what? You think you know it all. You don't know it all. Trust me.
No.
Being at
you're getting the tip of the iceberg here.
Exactly.
Tip of the iceberg.
Perfect analogy. Perfect. That's all you're getting. You're getting maybe for a good insider or on a team that doesn't keep it under wraps, you might be getting 40% of the stuff.
Say what you want. We talk about this all the time. I would have been okay with my team renting a player for $20 million and getting a Super Bowl.
And winning a Super Bowl, yeah.
But say what you will. Percy Harvin was a big-time player in the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl, he was big-time. The rest of the season, he played 8 games for the Seahawks. $20 million for 8 games.
Right. $2.5 million a game, whatever it comes out to. But
say what you want. They won the Super Bowl.
They won the Super Bowl. Who cares?
Right.
But for the Jets, it just screams desperation. I don't know what else. I mean, how is that him adding to a locker room that already is dysfunctional?
Terrible.
Is a circus, a dumpster fire.
Everybody said if he was causing problems for Russell Wilson,
what's he gonna do with Geno Smith?
Look out.
And Michael Vick.
And
the attitudes in that.
This is a disaster.
It's fun for me because I hate the Jets.
And listen, I know Rex Ryan. We give him his deserved portion of the blame for New York because he does own part of it. The GM in the front office there have put him in a completely horrible situation right now. Like, I'm not saying before. Before, some of the stuff, that was on him. Now, that's not on him. Like, he's not making... He's been undermined so bad. You could wonder... I mean, he can't quit because then he doesn't get, his money, and then you walked out on the team. And Look what that did to Petrino. Put him in a free-for-all for a while. You can't walk away. However, you've got to think that Rex Ryan wants to be fired from the Jets at the end of this year. Go be a defensive coordinator somewhere, and he'll get another shot as a head coach.
Yeah.
Obviously, you don't know that, but you'd have to think it's going to come up somewhere. It's just absolutely crazy. Good luck with that, Jets. Good luck.
Good luck. I just don't understand how any of that is going to work. Any of it. It just seems like such an odd move.
From a fantasy football point of view, I have mentioned, man, that stinks if you took Percy Harvin. First of all, the Jets had already played this week, so you couldn't play him.
Right.
Second of all, so Percy Harvin doesn't get a game this week. He already had his bye with the Seahawks. He also already he's going to have another bye with the Jets.
Yeah.
So he's going to have three less games, in your fantasy football season. So that's tough.
But was he really doing anything?
No. And who are you going to play him over?
Right. You have to have a terrible team if Percy Harvin started as the Jets with Geno Smith at quarterback.
So you're saying I could have started Percy Harvin?
Well, probably.
Okay. But he wasn't on my roster.
One of the crappy afternoon games was in Lambeau this afternoon where the Packers absolutely destroyed Carolina. I saw Adam Schefter tweet this out today, and it's related to all the other games that we haven't talked about yet. But raise your hand if you'd like to win the NFC South.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
It's bad.
Bad football.
A year after some pretty decent teams, at least, Panthers, Saints, this year struggles.
Tampa Bay gained a half game on everybody.
Struggle bus. Destination AFC South. The Packers ripped the Panthers 38-17, and it wasn't even that close. Panthers scored 14 in the fourth quarter. Packers,
after early
Aaron Rodgers
struggles,
said, just relax. Now they've won 3 straight. They shouldn't have won last week, though. No. That one still bothers me. But
early struggles, they are hitting stride.
They're 5-2 now. They're kind of in the driver's seat with the other teams around them. The Vikings lost today. Bears lost today. Lions
I feel like there's a lot of
win.
NFC North interdivision battles yet, though. I feel like these teams have played a lot of other teams. So there's still a lot to be sorted out there. We were looking ahead. I
think the Packers and Bears have played once already, didn't they? Yeah,
I
week
think
3.
So.
That was the start of the relax.
Yeah.
Because they beat week 4, 38-17 Green Bay beat Chicago. Oh, they had played Detroit the week before,
right,
and lost. Because that's why everyone was freaking out, because Detroit beat them in Detroit. And now they've rolled off 4 wins in a row.
I say that. They've played each of the NFC North teams once already.
And they'll
probably play them close to the end of the season.
They host Detroit the last game of the year.
That could be a fun one.
Now they play at Minnesota on November 23rd.
They come to Philly on November 16th.
Wow. And they
no, sorry. Philly goes to Green Bay.
And they host Chicago on November 9th. So actually, no, but they got probably the most important one is the last game of the year.
Right.
That could come down to the division winner depending on how Detroit does.
Yeah.
So, Packers all over the Panthers today, 38-17. Elsewhere, again, an NFC North, NFC South battle. The NFC North team coming out on top. The Saints were up, 23-10, I believe?
Yes.
23-10 with, about 8 minutes to go?
Right.
And the Lions scored 2 touchdowns.
And including off of a Breeze pick.
Breeze interception set it up.
Last touchdown.
And then I believe there was also a defensive pass interference call on the Saints Bush against the Lions Bush that of course, the Saints players thought was nuts, and the replay clearly showed that the guy was tugging on him, arm, draped all over him.
His left arm did not, chop across his arms before the ball got there. The problem was his right arm had him by the hip and was completely holding him and spinning him around before the ball got there.
Yeah.
I understand it, and I'm all for contact with that right arm that isn't, affecting the play. Go ahead, let it go. But he was starting to tackle him before the ball got there.
He
definitely was. And I didn't want that. I had picked the Saints to win that game. But that's the reality. That was very much pass interference. So
definitely was.
The Saints are now 2-4. A lot of people's favorite to win the NFC. Not just the NFC South, the NFC.
Yeah, including us, I think.
However, they are not out of it in the NFC South.
No, because the NFC South is so terrible. They're 2-4. I think the Falcons are 2-5.
I think
they're at least 2-4. The Panthers dropped today. I think they're 3-3.
And what the Bucks are 1-5.
Yeah, it's bad, absolutely bad.
So still in it, and in all honesty, if they were to get hot, not a team I would want to play. Late.
No, if they're getting better.
Think about this. And there was talk about this a few years ago when Seattle won the division and the Saints had to go there, even though Seattle had a worse record. Imagine if you're a wild card winner sitting at maybe 10 wins, and you've got to go maybe to an 8-win division winner. Let's say, not that it would happen. Let's say Green Bay's sitting at 10 wins, but wins the wild card because Detroit wins 11. I don't know. I'm just saying this to kind of prove a point. But then they have to. The Green Bay being the wild card has to go to Atlanta or to Green Bay and play in a dome versus those teams coming to Green Bay in January.
Right, it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
Right, which I know people are like, oh, they have a better record. I like the reward for winning your division. I know you could say, yeah, they're in a terrible division, but I like the reward for winning your division, getting that home game. Oh, man.
Sticking with the NFC North, actually, back-to-back, we'll have NFC North, AFC East crossovers here. This on that 4-year cycle, and this one's up this year. Miami, after coming off a devastating loss to Green Bay in literally the final seconds last week,
You're not hanging on to that one at all.
No, not at all. Had to travel to, God's gift, sealed it too, travel to Chicago today, where the Bears preseason, a lot of teams thought it'd be them and the Packers,
including me,
competing for the NFC North. I thought that too. Now, hey, they're 3-1 on the road, but after today, they're 0-3 at home.
Right, which is bad because that means they have 5 more home games too.
Yeah, so Miami looked actually really solid in this one.
They've been bad. The closest one was the loss to the Bills. They got blown out
at the beginning of the year.
They got blown out by the Packers a few weeks ago.
Lost by 13.
They lost by 13 to Miami, and it wasn't. This seemed like more than a 2-possession game.
Miami won 27-14. Ryan Tannehill was spot on today. I think he only had 6 incompletions, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Lamar Miller got a touchdown. Mike Wallace caught a touchdown. Dolphins defense got it done. Bears scored all their points in the second half, including one halfway through the fourth. Dolphins answered with a field goal of their own. They confused Jay Cutler. They made Brandon Marshall mad, which is always a win in my book.
And he's going off on players.
Yeah, it's just...
And I don't think it's just him. There's other players... Chicago could be in trouble. Trestman has been kind of sitting on maybe a case of grenades there anyway, just because of the makeup of that team.
Right.
Cutler, who has a history of just, whether rightfully or wrongfully, there's been a history of questioning his leadership. Brandon Marshall, who has had his ups and downs, to give him credit, I agree. I was as much in the anti-Brandon Marshall field as anyone really could be, that other than someone who he kind of came to your team and did absolutely nothing for you. I'm just like, yeah, he's overrated, all this stuff. He seemed to have his act together in Chicago and with Cutler. And I know there's been other things about how he's kind of been working on some of those demons that have been at the root of some of those issues. Losing brings out a lot of negativity in teams, and I think that's what we're seeing in Chicago. And
maybe some true character.
Right. I talked about this with some of the guys that I coached this week. it's easy for everybody to stay on the same page and stay positive when you're winning games. When you're in a close game, that's when a close game and when things aren't going your way, when you get a few unlucky bounces, that's when you need to stay positive and stick together. Because if you don't, that's when things start to fall apart, and that's what it looks like is happening in Chicago.
The good thing for the Bears is their next 2 games are on the road.
2 wins.
The bad thing for the Bears is it's at New England, bye week, at Green Bay.
Never mind, 2 losses.
Now, they do get to
Green Bay, you never know. Because I feel like Green Bay...
They could be an inconsistent team as well. Right now, they're playing well. It's hard to say 3 weeks from now because the bye in there, what's going to be happening up at Lambeau. But then, you could be coming off of 2 losses there, home for 2 games against crappy teams in Minnesota and Tampa Bay. But they've been awful at home. I guess that's one way to reverse the fortunes.
I'm not saying this will happen because they've shown no evidence of it happening. But what if Chicago were to go into New England and win? They're not an AFC team, so it's a possibility that they would win. But if they go into New England and win, they get to 4-4, get your bye week, and now they have a chance to go into Green Bay and turn things around.
It's a huge game for them. It could change their season.
The opportunity, because look, if they win those 2, like if they somehow could get to 5-4 over the next 3 weeks,
they got 2 easy.
They would have Minnesota and Tampa Bay after that.
You got to win those 2 games,
right? Because looking at the end of their schedule, it's not going to be easy
at Detroit, host Dallas, host the Saints, host Detroit. Go to Minnesota. So essentially, after they play Tampa Bay on November 23rd, they don't really have an easy game until December 28th.
So it's tough when your 2 must-win road games come back to back at this point in the season, and it's gonna be at New England and at Green Bay. That's tough.
If you're wondering what's going on in the late games currently playing right now, the Kansas City Chiefs just kicked a field goal 48 yards with 21 seconds left to take a 3-point lead over the Chargers.
That's what my fist pump was over.
Right. Now, just came up here now, Odell Beckham Jr. got a second touchdown of the game for the Giants. They've cut the Cowboys' lead to 7. It's 28-21 Dallas.
On my bench.
5.5 minutes to play in the game. All right, we're going to run through some of these other games here rather quickly. And another, again, NFC North, AFC East crossover year. Bills somehow come out with a victory at home against the pitiful Vikings. 17-16. Kyle Orton led the team down the field.
I'll be honest. The Kyle Orton I've seen the last few weeks, I have to give the Bills credit because when they sat E.J. Manuel, I was thinking, what are they doing?
Right.
This Kyle Orton is the Kyle Orton I was afraid that the Eagles were going to have to play against last year in Week 17, I believe. It was Week 17 against Dallas, needing a win. Not going to lose the game for you. Gives you a fighting chance at the end. That's pretty much what it is.
And they were also helped by, I believe, a pass interference or defensive holding penalty. Got the ball down there. Orton to Watkins with 1 second left. Extra points good. Game over. Bills win. They beat the Vikings 17-16.
But again, how many times this year, and maybe I'm just noticing it more this year, teams lose when they have to settle for field goals.
Yeah.
3 times Vikings had to settle for field goals.
Yep.
Yeah, you can't do it. Bills once. That's the difference. Now I don't know how long those field goals were, but let's say roughly, that if they're in
35
inside,
and in.
Right. If you get inside 35, you can't kick field goals 3 times when that happens.
Nope. Got to score. In a blowout that I don't think too many people saw coming. I think people thought Indy would win this game more often than not, but 27-0 Colts over Bengals. Cincinnati's reeling.
Freefall.
They got crushed by the Patriots. They tied the Panthers, who
in theory got lucky to lose, or lucky that they got a tie last week. They should have won in overtime, but they got lucky that they didn't lose that game because Panthers were right there with them. They couldn't stop them. The Colts, on the other hand,
are on a roll after starting the season 0-2. Now, admittedly, against good teams in
very good
Denver,
teams.
Who could be the best AFC team, besides maybe themselves, and against the Eagles, who are arguably, they're easily a top NFC team by record.
And they outplayed the Eagles. The Eagles, that was one where they hung around and were able to get enough to score there. On the other hand, you give up 30 points at home, you don't really deserve to win.
Now, I know they torched Jacksonville, they torched Tennessee, big deal. They beat Baltimore, who's a very good team, whose only other losses to Cincinnati, who was much better a few weeks ago. They were able to survive against Houston last week. At Houston, hostile place to play, a rivalry there.
That was a Thursday night game, too, so a short week. So yeah. And then to pitch the shutout against Cincinnati. That's what surprised me. Indianapolis winning, okay. To pitch a shutout against Cincinnati,
I know.
A preseason favorite to win their division. Ooh.
Now they
just put up 30-some points last week.
They go on the road for 2 now, at Pittsburgh and at the Giants. The Manning Bowl on November 3rd. That'll be the Monday night game that week.
All I can say is go Colts.
The Colts should be 7-2 entering their bye. That would be where they should be at. They should be. They're better than Pittsburgh.
Look
they're
at
better
that game
than the
coming
Giants.
out of the bye.
And then they host the Patriots on Sunday Night Football, November 16th.
That'll be a good one.
But that's really quite possibly their last test until, December 21st?
Right, against Dallas. They have 2 games. They have 2 games left on their schedule, I imagine, where they won't be more than a 3-point favorite. As of right now. New England, I think Indianapolis may be favored. They may be the underdog, even though they're at home.
Depends on what happens next month.
That's a month away. But then that Dallas game at Dallas, if Dallas continues to play the way they are, I imagine Indianapolis would actually be an underdog in that game because they're on the road. It might be 2.5 points or something
the home field
which
advantage.
is essentially
a push them.
Right. But the rest of their games, I mean,
the way they're rolling now, looking at their schedule, they should go 12-4.
Right. In all honesty, they could be pushing for
the number 1
1
seed.
or 2 seed in pushing for the 1 seed. Absolutely there to get the 2 seed. That game against New England is huge though, because New England's going to be pushing for that.
That could decide 1, 2, 3.
Right.
Depending on how much
means
Denver
an
rolls.
Extra game, an extra playoff game.
Right.
Against usually a wild card team, which is a hot team.
That November 16 game is huge. Yeah. The December 21st one against Dallas, not as much because it's not an AFC game, but it still will be an interesting one, especially if Dallas is challenging
Go Colts.
The Eagles for NFC East. So Indianapolis looking much better after a hard 2-game start. They didn't give up, and now look where they're at. All right, got to quickly roll through. Jaguars upset the Browns. That is just stupid
and it wasn't
on the Browns'
close.
part.
The Browns, and it wasn't like the Jaguars played that well. Defense played well. Blake Bortles threw 3 interceptions.
Jaguars are bad, but they get their first win over Cleveland, who you can't do that. If Cleveland wants to try to challenge for an AFC playoff spot in the wild card, most likely, these are the games you can't lose.
So a friend of mine from college, the same friend who goes to all these games all over the place, I don't know how he does it, was at the Florida State game last night with sideline passes, all right? And then ends up he went to the Jaguars game today. And when he got there, he's like, today's the day, Jaguars. And he was right. Today they won.
Yeah,
so
well, good for him.
Yeah.
So that happened. Browns, that's awful. Redskins with their 3rd quarterback of the year now. Colt McCoy comes in, leads him on the comeback, beats the Titans at home.
Trade RG3,
get rid of him.
Trade Kirk Cousins and
Colt McCoy's the future. But yeah, good for both those teams who are pretty much irrelevant already in the playoff talk.
Hooray!
We talked about Baltimore already. They're hitting their stride. They've improved to 5-2. They dismantled the Falcons 29-7
really the last 2 weeks.
Ravens are rolling. Cincinnati's taking a step back. Pittsburgh and Cleveland can't get out of their own way. This could be another year for the Ravens, and I don't know if I'd want to play them in January.
I don't think we've had a Ravens-Steelers game yet, have we?
Yeah, we did. And Ravens beat the crap out of them in week 2.
You're right. Never mind. Sorry. I forgot.
But that one I think was in Baltimore. They still have to go to Pittsburgh.
It was disappointing because those games have been really good over the last few years, and it was not.
All right. The last early game, quickly, crazy one. We talked about Percy Harvin trade from the Seahawks. They lost last week to Dallas at home, which rarely happens. You think them going on the road to a team that's really not that good, you think easy win for Seattle. Not so fast.
Wrong.
St. Louis... They didn't settle for field goals. They got 4 touchdowns. It was enough to beat Seattle at 28-26. In large part to their special teams were absolutely incredible today.
And with a chance to ice it, they weren't able to pick up a first down. So they're going to have to punt from deep in their own territory. And this is where it gets crazy. They call a fake punt. Kudos to Jeff Fisher.
Beautifully executed fake punt.
Kudos to Jeff Fisher. I don't know if you saw the guy running in. It looked like extra protection. They snapped the ball, and he runs a perfect screen because he ran his defender into the guy who was covering the intended receiver. So it wasn't illegal. Nothing. He didn't set a pick by any means. He ran his defender in to set the pick. Just perfectly executed. Allowed them to look like they were going to be able to ice the clock. They get a first down, fumble the ball, and then just mass chaos for the ball, and
they end up
getting it back.
Game over. So that was an interesting one.
Which could have huge implications because that's a loss in the division, which would directly affect if they end up in a
NFC
tie
West,
there.
NFC in general.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely a big one in St. Louis today. Late games, one final. Chiefs pull off the win in San Diego, 23-20. Andy Reid is now 14-2 coming off of the bye week.
That is the single reason why I picked that game. That is the single reason why I picked the Chiefs in that game.
Well, it makes up for what was the other one that you messed up?
Yeah.
Indianapolis, Cincinnati.
Yeah. Oops. I said we're not talking about that one.
Okay.
We only talk about the ones we get right.
All right, I got you. Then I won't talk about how I picked the Rams to win the West. The Cardinals are up on the Raiders by 8. They have the ball with 2 minutes to play. It's 21-13. Arizona looks to improve to 5-1, where the Raiders will drop to 0-6. The Chiefs improve to, I believe, 4-3, and the Chargers drop to 5-2. The Cowboys are holding off the Giants. They're up by a touchdown, 28-21. There's 2 minutes to go in that one. The Cowboys also have the ball. Tonight's game is a big one on paper with some historic teams. Broncos hosting the 49ers. I expect Denver to come out ahead on that one. Tomorrow night.
Also, Peyton Manning, I think, only needs
possibility
three touchdowns would give him the all-time record for touchdown passes.
Passing Brett Favre.
Yeah, your boy.
Yeah. Then the Monday night game is Houston, who coming off that Thursday night loss to Indianapolis, against the Steelers, coming off of their loss to the beatdown by Cleveland last week. That's an interesting one going on in the Steel City. Pittsburgh's got to get something going. They really do need this win.
They do. They need it pretty badly. And the Texans, on the other hand, if they with a win, would get to 4-3. Not quite out of it yet, hanging around in there. It'll be interesting to see how that pretty much anemic Steelers offense does against the Texans defense. My guess is they blow up because I'm starting the Texans defense in one of my fantasy leagues. So my guess is if you have Steelers guys, play them tomorrow night because tomorrow night's the night they go off.
All right. I think that's everything here. That's all the NFL coverage we have for you this week. And do you have anything to add for this upcoming week? Anything that we might have missed last week?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. We're not having a show next week.
Right.
We are both going to State College for the Penn State-Ohio State game late Saturday night. We don't expect to be home till very early Sunday morning.
Right,
so we're going to take the week off, just relax. We'll be back.
We're recovering, licking our wounds after that one.
We'll be back in 2 weeks when the calendar will read November.
Wow.
And we will be in week 9 of the NFL season, which is more than halfway through.
Stop.
We're getting to that time of the year.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
And what would that be? August again?
No, July. Your favorite.
July. No,
July.
Thank you. Give me August or September or something like that. That's what I want to see. All right. So I think that's everything. Thanks for joining us. That wraps up the 152nd episode of the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show.
We hope you tune in every Sunday evening at 6:30 for our take on sports. Until next time, I'm J-Raff.
And I'm Joe Mays. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Joe Mays and J-Raff Show. Don't forget, you can download each episode of the show from the podcast section of the iTunes Store. We'll see you next time, and thanks again for listening.